All right, welcome to today's Simplicity Specialty Training, which is an in-depth look at formatting a spreadsheet and importing to Simplicity. What we're going to do very first, so to get here from the home screen, this is the screen that you see when you first log into Simplicity. We're going to go to Tools and Account Importer. Okay, so this brings us to this screen here. What we're going to do is pull up the pre-import checklist. This comes in really, really handy when you are formatting a spreadsheet. You can just go step by step, make sure that your spreadsheet is up to the specifications, and that does help alleviate a lot of errors that get returned on your spreadsheets. You can literally check these off of the checklist as you go down the list to make sure that, that you've gone over all of the instructions. So what we're going to do now is pull up our spreadsheet. Okay, so we've got our account number column here, client name. We've got a couple added columns. If you've ever attended one of our new account trainings, this is just the dummy spreadsheet that we use there. Just got a little more errors in it so that we can take a look at some of these things. So what we can do is pull up our pre-import checklist. So the first thing is file type must be an Excel or comma separated value. That's a .csv file. Okay, this is currently a .csv file. You can tell because the tab here automatically defaulted to the name of my document. If it's a .xlsx document, this tab has to be sheet 1 and nothing else. You will get an error if it's anything other than sheet 1. A good way to remedy that is just to save it as a comma separated value or a CSV file. Okay, so we've completed that. Step number 2, Excel sheet name, we just covered that. Our required columns, let's go through and make sure that we have those. Number 1 is client name. Number 2 is debtor first name, and number 3 is debtor last name. Okay, for consumer accounts only, we'll do client name and debtor company name for commercial accounts. Okay, so we've got our client name here, and we are just doing debtor files here. We're not doing commercial, so client name, debtor first name, and debtor last name. So we've got all 3 of our required columns here. Also in this instruction you'll see for consumer accounts, the debtor name must be in 2 separate fields. For example, debtor first name and debtor last name. Now we've got both of our columns here, but if these 2 were removed and it just had a column like this, there is a simple way to fix that. What we're going to do is go to our Data tab. First, actually, we're going to insert some fields here. Okay, we're going to highlight the column that we're wanting to separate. Click on your Data tab, Text to Columns. Leave it as delimited. And we'll do it based on a space. And do you see how that separates the 2 names there? We can click Next and Finish. All right, so what it's done is it's separated our names for us. So now we can rename this first name and name this column last name. Any questions about that process? Okay. So because we've got our 2 columns there with our first and last names, we're just going to delete these off of our current spreadsheet. And we'll go to our next step. Okay, so make sure that we have all of our required columns, and that just means that the columns that will map, that they have relevant data in each row. So we want to make sure that there are no blank columns. Okay, so looking through our spreadsheet, looks like so far we've got data in all these columns, but this column here, if we scroll down all the way to the bottom, there's no data contained in this column. So we have two options here. We can either delete it off of our spreadsheet, which I will do, or you can just not map it in your mapping. You can leave it in your file column. If you map blank columns, it will return an error. So you either want to delete your column or just leave it unmapped. Okay, so in order to import accounts to a pre-existing client, so these are our clients located through settings and clients, the client's name in the file must be identical to the client's short name in client settings. Okay, so what that means is that in this client name section here, if I want these debtors to be imported and be under a specific client name that's already existing in my system, this here needs to be the same as the the client short name in your Simplicity account. Okay, so symbols such as the $sign, the percentage, a colon, a hyphen, or an apostrophe, if they're not required, so for example, Social Security numbers and phone numbers, hyphens are allowed. Slashes in dates are allowed as well. But things like $signs and percentage signs are what typically we see hold a spreadsheet up. So we'll look through our spreadsheet really quick. And right here, you'll notice that we have $signs in our column. We want to remove those. We'll right-click up at the top, go down to Format Cells. Right now it's formatted as a currency with a symbol. You can either select None as the symbol or select Number with 2 decimal places, and just automatically it'll remove that for you. Okay, so then as you can see, it's removed all of our $signs here. If we continue scrolling through our spreadsheet, it doesn't look like we have any other symbols to worry about here. Okay. If there's a column for the debtor's state, make sure it's formatted as a correct abbreviation. So here's our column for state, and as you can see, we've got a couple here that are listed as the full state name rather than the 2-character abbreviation. So what we can do is highlight this column. And what I'm going to do is do a find and replace function. So I'll hit Control F as in Frank. I'll find the word Idaho. Okay, and I'll replace it with ID. Okay, so it's made those replacements for me, and it's been corrected. All right, any questions so far in the process?
Quick question. On line 7, you have a first name but no last name. Oh, excuse me. Go down to 9. Sorry, 9.
Oh, gotcha. Okay. And that's right, and that's something that we'll go over as well. With blank fields and blank columns, you never want to have a placeholder or anything like that. You want to make sure that your data is complete. If you were to import a first name and not a last name, this line right here would probably error out on its own. It wouldn't probably kick your entire spreadsheet out, but this line would definitely error out for not having the correct data. Okay, so while we're on here, we'll just put one in. All right, any other questions? Okay, continue through our checklist. Okay, if there's a column for debtor Social Security number, we want to make sure that there's no placeholders. So this is an example, all zeros. This is really important because our system links your accounts based on Social Security number. So unless you check the box that says do not link the accounts, they will link based on Social Security number. If I have two accounts with the same Social Security number, it will overwrite the data of the second account. So for example, let's take a look at our Social Security number column here. So we have this one here, okay, and then we also have this one and this one, and they're all zeros. So when I import this to Simplicity, this will be the first account that's entered with that Social Security number. The consecutive accounts that also have that Social Security number will be overwritten with this debtor's information. So you want to make very sure that you do not have placeholders in your Social Security number column. All fives is another one that we typically see. Okay, so to remove that, we can do the find and replace function again. We can hit Control and then F as in Frank. And we'll copy and paste that into our find and replace function. Okay, and you can replace information with nothing. So if I have nothing, it'll just leave my cell blank. If you have blank cells and it's not a required column like client name, first name, or last name, it's fine. As long as the entire column is not blank, then you'll be fine. So if we click Replace All it does is take out that data for me and leave me with a blank cell. Okay, any questions about that? Okay. All right, so we do not have interest in this particular spreadsheet, but this is a very important thing to remember if you are adding claim interest. So to calculate interest, the spreadsheet must contain all three of the following data: a claim amount, an interest rate, and a claim interest start date. Each field must have a valid numeric value. Claim amount and claim interest rate fields must contain numeric values. If no value is present, a zero value must be added. Okay, so in order to calculate interest on an import, say that you have a claim amount and you have pre-existing interest that you want to import along with that. If you're importing an interest rate, all of these elements must be present in your spreadsheet in order for that to import correctly. Okay, and then going along with that, making interest rates into percentages. It shows you an example of what it should be and what it should not be. So make sure that you pay attention to that if you are importing interest rates. Okay, so if nothing is mapped to the field account number, one will be automatically generated. We do have an account number column in our spreadsheet, so ours will not be automatically generated, but if you choose to leave that off of your spreadsheet, one will be generated. The way that that's generated is 2015-0001. That would be your very first account in the system this year. Next year, the very first account in your system, beginning, let's say, January 2016, would show up as 2016-0001 and count from there. Okay, our next step is our date format. All dates must have the proper date format. So let's look through our spreadsheet and see any dates. The only date column we have is our date of birth, and currently it is not in the correct format. The format that it needs to be in order to import to Simplicity, we're going to right-click up at the top, go down to Format Cells, select Date, and this is what we call the short date format. This is the month, the day, and the year with slashes included. Okay, so then those have been formatted correctly. All right, so this is saying here that each column heading on our spreadsheet has to be unique, or else it will cause an error in your spreadsheet. So we'll go through Just make sure. So here we can see I've got two of the same column header. That will create an error for my spreadsheet and not allow any of my data to be imported. So if I do phone 3 there and phone 4 there, then that will resolve the issue. Okay. Our security limit, we just recommend importing no more than 20,000 accounts at a time. Okay, and then typically you should be good to go. I have included a couple other issues that we see just so that we can make sure that we don't leave anything out in our training here. Well, sometimes we do see where a client claim number is so long that it comes across in scientific notation. You can solve this a couple different ways. If formatting it as a number, like I'm about to do, does not work, we do have an instruction PDF on how to pull those numbers out of scientific notation. But typically a lot of times what you can do is just right click at the top, go down to Format Cells, click on Number with no decimal places, and click OK. And then that brings your numbers out of scientific notation. Okay. Another thing we see is incomplete zip codes. Zip codes do need to be formatted as well. So we'll right click up at the top, go down to Format Cells, and zip codes is under Special and Zip Code. And then what that will do with these ones that were incomplete, it just adds zeros at the beginning. Okay. We've formatted our date column already, so we'll move on to Social Security number. Social Security number is under Special as well. We'll click Social Security number and click OK. That just makes sure that it's formatted properly. That'll give your data a nice clean look. Our phone numbers, if you hit Shift and select all of your columns at once, then you can format them all at once by right-clicking, Format Cells, Special, and Phone number. Okay. All right, any questions about in-depth formatting? Okay. All right, and when you save in a CSV, I'll show you that error again. This error pops up. You can just click yes. It will probably pop up every time you save as a CSV file. Clicking yes just removes the error but doesn't change any of your data. Okay, so we're going to go to our account importer. Choose our file and click Prepare File for uploading. Okay, we'll create a new file map. And we'll just match these up. So for those of you not familiar with the mapping process, what I'm doing here, our file column represents all of the column headers in our spreadsheet. Our Simplicity account elements represent all of the fields in Simplicity available to import to. And all we're doing is telling Simplicity where to put our data. Okay, so this is really an important thing to bring up. With current balance due, this can come across as a number of different things. It can come across as current balance due, current collectible amount, current principal, whatever you want to show as the current balance being collected on, you will map to claim amount. All of our debtor information begins with the word debtor. It is in alphabetical order going down the list. So if we find debtor address, debtor city. And while I'm doing this, are there any questions that I can answer for anyone? Just going through our list here. And this can get kind of tedious, but the good news is that if you use your same column headers for a majority of your spreadsheets, you can reuse the same mapping over again. If there's any difference in your column headers, then it will unmap the match, and you'll have to just go in and edit your file map. But for the most part, if you use the column headers all the same, then you can reuse your mappings as well. So with our phone numbers are just a little bit different because where our things like account number, I'll show you here, are no longer in the list. We've already used that option. Phone numbers are reusable. So you can see it stayed in my list for use. Okay. All right, and if I had co-debtors in my file, I can select this drop-down and select up to 6 co-debtors. In the instance that I did have a co-debtor or a co-signer on file, I would still have my information in my file column. Those would be the column headers relating to my co-debtor information, and I would just map it to the information in this box. Okay, we're going to go over these two options really quick here. Our first option, lump financial claims into a single account on records with matching debtor Social Security number and creditor name or account number. So what that means is that when we have a debtor with a Social Security number, just as an example, we can use our 000 example. So we have one debtor in our file with that particular Social Security number. We have another debtor in the file with the same Social Security number, and they have the same creditor name or they have the same account number, as in addition to having the same Social Security number. Most times, if you're not using filler data, that will just relate to the same debtor, and you can lump their financial claims onto a single account by checking this box. Any questions about that option? Okay. The second option is do not link existing debtor based on Social Security number. So in the example of having all zeros in your spreadsheet, if you know that you have filler data in there and for whatever reason you can't remove it, don't want to remove it, you can select this box, and that will mean that there will be no link between any of your accounts for any reason. If you had excuse me, the same debtor on the spreadsheet with the same Social Security number, that same debtor had 2 different claims, checking this box would make it so that if you're in one of these debtors' accounts, you would have no indication that there was another account on file for that particular debtor. Any questions about that option? Okay, so the thing that we see most often and that seems to be most beneficial is not checking either box. Not checking either box allows there to be a hyperlink on the account that tells you there's another account on file for that particular debtor with that particular Social Security number, but it does not lump the claims onto a single financial account. So you'll have, in our example, we have a debtor on our spreadsheet that has 2 claims. And what this will do is we'll import both claims into different account numbers, but it will create a hyperlink on the account showing that there is another account on file for that particular debtor with another claim amount. Okay, so we'll name our mapping We're going to leave both of these boxes unchecked because we do want links, but we don't want it to lump. We'll click Save New Mapping. Okay, so when you've created a file map, if you have a spreadsheet that you believe is really similar to one that you've used before, you can always go into Edit File Map to check, just to make sure that everything that's in your file column that you need to be in Simplicity is in your mapping column and not in your file column. If you click on Edit File Map and your column headers are back in your file column, it may be a good idea just to create a new mapping or edit the existing mapping to include the new column headers. Okay, so we've selected this mapping that we've created specifically for this spreadsheet. Our portfolio name, these are all optional. So we're going to skip to step number 4, which is Import Account. And while this is importing, is there any questions about this process? Okay, this info box is a live counter, so we only have 50 accounts on this particular spreadsheet, but it's really useful when you have a couple thousand accounts to import. It really tells you where you're at in that import process and when it might be done. Okay, so it says 50 of 50 accounts. If this had said something like 45 of 50 accounts, we would just click on our results spreadsheet and it would tell us if we had any errors. Okay, so that is our in-depth training import for today. Are there any questions at all? Anything that you had hoped I'd go over that I didn't? All right, if there are any questions, you can always submit a help desk ticket by going to Help and then Help Desk, or you can give us a call at our support desk and we'll be happy to answer any questions that you might have. Thank you so much for attending to today's specialty training, and we hope to have you on our next one. That will be on Monday at the same time, 10 o'clock Mountain Time. All right, thanks so much, and everyone have a nice day.
Thank you.